Welcome to the Business of Family, the podcast where we explore the stories, challenges, and opportunities of family businesses. I'm your host, Tammy Buss, and I'm a family business survivor, and I'm also a family business advisor. In this show, we'll be talking with family business leaders and experts to bring you insights and inspiration so you too can survive your family business journey. Whether you're a founder, a successor, a professional, or just curious about family business, this podcast is for you. So today's guest is Rebekah Streeter Rad. She is the founder of Voda Retreats, a wellness brand dedicated to helping busy individuals, teams, and travelers reduce stress, fight burnout, and build sustainable self-care habits. Wow, that's a big job right there. So Voda Retreats was born from Rebekah's own experience with burnout while running a family-owned bed and breakfast and navigating the challenges of entrepreneurship. So beyond Voda Retreats, Rebekah also plays a key role in her family-owned daycare business. So her experience in running a multi-generational family business has given her deep insight into leadership, teamwork, and the unique challenges of balancing entrepreneurship with personal well-being. Welcome, Rebekah.
Thank you for having me.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is a
That's a
lot. And
lot.
funnily enough, while you're saying that, I don't think I've ever not worked for a family-owned business.
Wow. Wow.
Ever in my
Yeah.
in maybe once in my entire career.
Well, you know what? When we think about it, in Canada, we have, over 800,000 family businesses that are under 100 employees, which is about 63% of small businesses in Canada. So the chances of working for one are quite high, but we never think about that, though, do we?
No, never really registered until it was
Yeah.
framed like that for me.
So give me a little bit of background into, your the family bed and breakfast, the family daycare, your own business. Like, tell me a little bit about that journey and how you ended up where you are today.
Yeah. So from the time I was 5, we had a preschool in our basement. So I never got to go there personally, but my younger brothers did. My mom loves working with children. She was in early childhood development when she was pregnant with me. And then when I was 5, we opened a preschool in our basement, and that ran for a good 20 years. She did part
Wow.
day programs for 3 and 4-year-olds. So usually 3-year-olds in the morning, 4-year-olds in the afternoon. And I probably hundreds of children have gone through that program. Most of my brother's friends and have all gone through that. So I grew up listening to children every morning. Eventually, when I was 15, we added a before and after school care part to it, and we moved it to a different location. But we still ran the preschool out of our house. So we had 2
Wow.
locations. And I started working there when I was 15 during the summers, doing summer camps. I also have a dance background, so I would do dance and movement with the kids. I have also worked with kids my entire life. Um, by the time I was 19, we built a facility with 5 classrooms on a 5-acre property.
Mm.
We have renovated that twice since, so that would have been in 2000. And age myself a little bit.
I know. I hate when you start throwing out the dates, right?
Right. But that was the year I graduated high school. So in 2000, we built that. By 2010, we had already added on an additional 3 more classrooms.
Wow.
And just last year, we didn't expand the space, but we added 5 new bathrooms, which allowed us to take an extra 50 children. So now instead of 100 children, we have 150 after school children, and we have within that 150, we have 40 full day children, between 40, 48, because we now do toddlers since the pandemic. We do toddlers, and then we have a preschool program there and a junior primary program.
Yeah, highly in demand now, the
It is.
service you're providing.
My mother also has another business there. She is creating I call it a video game. She won't call it a video game, but she is working with an SLP friend of hers, and they're creating a game that will teach children how to communicate with each other again, because since the advent of handheld devices, our
Mm.
communication skills have dropped significantly. So not
Oh,
just phones,
absolutely.
but even
Yeah.
just like handheld games. And so it's
I think we're
called,
going to soon the evolution of our bodies will be our neck will be bent down, like it
right?
will not be straight
Little,
up on our
little
heads
hump.
anymore. It'll be like bent over because
Exactly.
everybody's looking down, right?
So it's an online game that can be used with SLP, so speech language pathologists, for those of you who don't know what an SLP is. I had to learn that myself. To work with students who are either highly functional or not very functional at all in their communication skills. And so they can practice online and they get to use the gaming controller that they already know how to use, and it really engages them in it. So that's her like fun side project that she does. And then we also have Voda Retreats, and that is owned by me and my parents together. But I do the most of the day-to-day work. And I go on the other side, and we have kits like a digital detox kit where we teach people how to have better digital habits and just get them off the screens altogether if we can.
Right, right. Well, that's, when you think about running a daycare or preschool or school program, that's a lot of stress there. So you needed to set up this voter retreats just to give yourself a little bit of a break. It's stressful. I
Yeah,
can't imagine
exactly.
working with 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds all day long, with your back in high school working in the daycare sort of sphere. And then what about the bed and breakfast? How did that come into play? Like, where is
Yeah.
that from your family? Again, from your family business, you go, okay, I've got,
How did I
this
get
that
there?
started, and then the family business has this, and then I've got this, and now I've got a video game. Like that's a lot of family businesses all happening at once, right?
It is. So I during the time, like, but let's say between like 2000 and 2012, I also ran a dance school out of our business and would teach hip hop, ballet, tap, Russian dance to the before and after school children as well as on weekends. So
Mm.
community classes, and loved that. I love working for myself. It's always, I don't really think I could do anything else. But when I got pregnant with my daughter, I got to the point where I was like, okay, I don't really want to work with kids anymore. And what else can I do? So while I was on maternity leave, I kind of decided that I wouldn't go back. And me and my um, then husband decided that we had this huge space in this house that we were living in. It did have 10 bedrooms, and my,
Wow.
yeah, that's
There's
a
a lot of
whole
space.
there's a whole other story there.
Oh, I might have to have you back to talk about
Yeah,
that.
but his family owned this big house and had built this big house when they immigrated to Canada, and it was only his mom living there. And we moved in to help her with stuff basically. And my aunt and uncle own a bed and breakfast, and they talked it up so much that we're like, well, why don't we give this a try? And so we,
That's the entrepreneurial spirit because that's a 24-hour, 7-day a week, 365-day a year job.
it is. So we started with our 3 bedrooms and eventually had a second location in Muscatavit Harbor. So if you know Nova Scotia at all, our second location was 5 bedrooms on the ocean, about an hour outside of Halifax, and we had a sauna and a steam room, and very into wellness. We did wellness events there because I've always been big into wellness. We had multiple Airbnbs that we ran, and eventually opened a restaurant.
Oh, wow. Now, were you still involved with the family business at this point, or was this when
It's,
you had your daughter, you took a step out of the family business
yeah,
and got into another family business?
basically, yeah, I stepped back from the daycare and those businesses. Um, we did this for about 4 years. I completely burnt myself out doing this. We had my daughter plus she has 2 half brothers who are older than her, and so there was 3 kids under 5 at the time, and we had them 50-50. So I was looking after kids, making all the meals myself for the bed and breakfast, plus doing most of the cleaning myself. And then he did really like the back end of the websites, but I did the day to day
Right.
physical tasks of
The
running the
operations really,
business.
like the day to
Yeah.
day. Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Wow, that's a
loved
big
it.
commitment. And
And
having
it
3 kids.
yeah, and we really I did a lot of research when we opened it about how to set it up so that you don't burn yourself out and taking days off. Unfortunately, that was not his view on the subject. And I eventually left the business and the marriage. It was a very verbally abusive marriage. So I left that and was able to move home with my parents with my daughter when she was about 2. And had to take a year off, and because I had so many physical signs of stress.
Mhm.
I had basically, my doctor said I had concussion symptoms without having the concussion.
Oh,
That's how
wow. Wow.
stressed I put myself under between the
Mhm.
business and the relationship. And so I started having to do all these habits. I dug into the research. I already had a movement background from my dance teaching because I had taken kinesiology. I had all these movement based theories that I already knew and put them together to manage myself. And that's how we end up with Voda Retreats. So I also came back to help my parents with the daycare while I was basically rehabilitating myself. I got back into
Mhm.
helping them. They're getting older, so my dad had a few health issues where I've in the past 3 to 5 years had to stand in and be him.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
Now we're at the other end where he's semi-retired and he looks after my daughter
Oh,
while I
nice.
work.
Nice.
So he works in the morning. He goes for 6 a.m., comes home, and then he putters around the house, does the cleaning, and takes my daughter to dance, and I do the work, and I still cook at the daycare every day.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
the
Wow.
kids plus do this, yeah, and so it's yeah.
So you have the daycare, which is again the family business, and then you have Voda Retreats. Is that a family as well? Like, are your parents involved in that, or is this something that you're by yourself?
My mom loves accounting, so she does all the accounting for the business because that is like
Mhm.
her passion beyond. So she does that, but my dad will still come in and help me pack orders. So we do a lot of corporate work, and so he will come
Right.
in and help me pack, help me deliver, and just make sure that I can successfully do what I need to do by picking up any slack or helping me out
Right.
with my daughter. Yeah,
And do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have 2 younger brothers.
Are they involved in the family business at all?
Not anymore. When we've all worked in it at one point. So growing
As
up,
most family business stories go, right?
exactly.
Depending. If you're an accountant, probably not. But even in my business, my kids cleaned the office. So I mean, they're still somewhat helping, right? And mind you, they were both fired twice. But that's a whole other that's a whole other subject we can go down.
Exactly.
But so they were in the business, and then how did they actually exit, and what are they doing now?
So they both worked in it mainly as summer camp people every year. So while they were in university or in high school for March break and summer camp, they would come and be leaders and work with the kids.
Right.
Um, the middle brother eventually went into the military and is military police.
Hmm.
And he did a few tours. He's been to Paulituck during the pandemic. He was up in the Northwest Territories with his family. They're now in Happy Valley Goose Bay, but they also run a coffee business on the
Oh,
side. They still have their
so that
own family.
entrepreneurial spirit, right?
Exactly.
It's
And
in your DNA.
it is. And then my youngest brother went to St. Mary's University and did sports management. And he has worked in accreditation for the Olympics. He has worked for multiple games around the world, some in Turkmenistan, all over the place. But when the pandemic hit, they were in Dubai when it hit.
Mm.
For the World's Fair was supposed to be there. Unfortunately, it didn't happen because of the pandemic, but they ended up moving home. And he now does home renovations. So again, kind of working for himself.
Right.
So he did that for a few years. He just got back into working for games. He's at the Invictus. So he's
Hmm.
splitting his time between here and Vancouver. So he's back in Vancouver. His wife
Right.
and are still here. And she has always worked for herself as well. She has had a few design businesses over the years. and right now is staying home with her kids and homeschools
Right.
her older.
So, when you think about this, like you're in the business, the kids have been, your brothers have been in the business, out of the business, have their own careers, have their own paths, and you've been in, out, and back in, and now helping and still have your own endeavor. So, what does the future like from a succession standpoint for the family business and even the Voda Retreats? Like, what does that look like? Have you had conversations with your family? Like, what is the succession plan? What is the legacy? Sounds like your parents have had this business for a very long time.
Yeah, about
And what does that look like?
5 years so
Hmm.
far, uh, 35 years plus. It's gone through a few stages. Yes, we're talking about it more frequently now. If as my mom says, she's like, if you asked us like when you guys were little, your youngest brother wanted to take it over. He was adamant. He was going to live at home
Yeah,
with
forever.
my parents,
Yeah.
with his wife and his kids, and he was going to take over the business. And that's like he's the one that has actually traveled the most. We all love to travel, but he has lived in Spain and all over the world. And if you ask my daughter, she's going to take over the
Oh,
daycare, but she's 10, and just because she likes going there, I'm like, I don't think that's what you really like. But
oh, you don't know. She's only 10. Who knows what she's going
it's
to
fair.
develop, right?
You never know. But right now, she's like, I want it. And then for a while, we thought we would sell it before kind of I came back into the business. Unfortunately, it's a little bit up in the air because of what government is doing with childcare.
Hmm.
And because that has taken so long to roll out, we're still kind of a little bit in limbo as to what we'll be able to do with the business in the next few years.
Right.
So it's we always have talks of, are we going to sell the business and keep the buildings, because we've got two properties right next to each other.
Hmm.
We have an office space next to our daycare. We have this massive property doing rented out. We've been doing a lot of searching on commercial leases.
Hmm.
Do I want to take it over? So
Right.
we're in a really flex state of what do we want to do in the next 10 years with it.
Right. Well, and that's what happens as a family business advisor. Part of my role is to get the family aligned, to make sure that everybody's involved. Even if your brothers are not involved in the business, they're still part of the estate, right?
Exactly.
And what does that look like? And there becomes that, the family component, which is what you do as a family, and then there's the business component, being the daycare or the Voda Retreats
Mhm.
or wherever that is, and then the ownership component. Like, so who's the owner? What does the structure look like, and what does that look like moving forward? Because you can have your brothers can be part of the business, but not have a day to day role in operations, but to have
Exactly.
that vision and to help guide it, because the hard part is moving from Gen 1 to Gen 2, because there wasn't really a plan to develop this family business that you
Exactly.
wanted to transfer, right? Because you did it because you loved what you did, or you just needed an income.
Mhm.
And it turned out to be this great business, but you never really thought about what does that succession look like. And the easiest thing in a lot of cases is just to sell it, because how do you divide it equally or non-equally between children who are in the business and children who are not in the business? And do your brothers have how many kids do they have? You said one
Uh,
stays home, is homeschools.
yeah, they both have two children. They each have a boy
Right.
and a girl. Yeah.
So, I mean, there you go. You got five in the next generation. So you had three, now you got five. It starts to be
Yeah.
more complicated, right? Do you include your brothers in those conversations? Do your parents include them in, what to do with the business, or what the opportunities are, if they would like to be a part? Like, is that part of any conversations?
Yeah, in a roundabout way. We've had even conversations about, do we build a family complex and eventually all move together somewhere?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Neither of them are very interested in running the business at all.
Right.
I think that if there was, God forbid, to be an accident and I needed help they would be here in a second to come help, but
Right.
they've been out of it so long, they wouldn't know what to do. beyond maybe helping me with some paperwork.
Well, the
But
skill set, right? It depends on the skill
exactly.
set. And, there's the working with the children on a day-to-day basis, which is completely different skill set from the business skill set of running the business, being a landlord,
Yeah.
expanding, doing whatever. So, one of the things that I try to get families to think about is what are the opportunities? And, how can you still potentially be an owner and carry on and hire somebody. So I
Yeah.
have a family that, the parents had passed away and there's three siblings and none of them really wanted to sort of run the business. So they hired somebody to run the business. And they still are in their own lanes doing their own thing, but now they have somebody who's a third party running it so that they can maintain ownership because they think, oh, I want this business to continue. And maybe the next generation there'll be a leader develop out of there or, my kids are interested and
Mhm.
they're 10 and so it's not really a
Yeah,
commitment yet but understanding because what I find as a first generation family business myself and having transitioned one business actually divided it into four and then having this new business again as a family business is that you have to look at what the opportunities are and to talk about it early and just make sure you have clarity because what if your parents say, well, the easiest thing is just to sell it. And then your brother's wife said, well, I would have ran that. I'm homeschooling. Why wouldn't I, be involved in this system and help to develop it differently? So, part of what I do is to get families talking to come up and align with, no, the answer is we're going to sell it. Great. Well, then how do you prep it for
then we'll do
sell?
that. Yeah.
To get the most value or what are the opportunities now or in the future? Well, we're going to have to grow it a little bit more if there's an opportunity or a role that's a full-time role for me, or I do this part-time, I can do this from a distance. So it's interesting when you hear people's stories about,
Yeah.
yeah, they're in the business, not in the business. But then the other side of the coin comes from, estate planning. Well, what if the business is the largest part of the estate? Right? Does that stay with you because you're involved? Now, do you have your brothers as partners? Well, maybe, maybe not. So, have you talked about that at all?
Yeah. So right, and we're right. We're right in the thick of like, and it's really all coming from me at this
Hmm.
point, and it's more out of a place of like, if something happens to you, I want to know that I know everything before that happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right up until this point, I didn't think of that. So up right now, it's structured so that yes, me and my brothers would equally share
Hmm.
all the businesses and whatever that entails. But now there's conversations about what if we sell, there's conversations about what if we get this person to take over and we own the businesses and what does be like having a commercial lease look like,
Yeah.
moving things from because it was used as a school, it was nonprofit, and now it's not anymore. So we've had to switch that out. And yeah, but
It's
it's a lot of
complicated, right?
very complicated. And we're right in the middle and it's mostly me going, okay, I need,
Yeah.
I need to know. So let's go. But again, we're stuck in limbo on some things just because they haven't finished rolling out.
Absolutely. And that, it doesn't surprise me because I can't tell you that all the clients I've dealt with on my, long career, I'm not even going to go into the dates, even if it starts with an eight. Um, I, you know, I'm generally brought in by a second gen or maybe a third gen, depending on how the first gen transitioned to second, because there's clarity. They start to worry, as we as parents are aging, parents are in their 60s, 70s, and kids go, I don't know what's happening. I want to make sure they're okay. Are they all right financially?
Yeah.
What's going to happen? And look at opportunities. And I think that's brilliant that you're having those conversations because that's a very hard thing to do is to sit down and have these conversations because they're not pleasant, right? They're
No,
not like fun. Hey, mom or dad, if you get sick or die, like, what am I
exactly.
getting? You're not doing
Somebody
it because you're greedy. You're just like, I need to
needs
understand.
to
We need to
know. Yeah,
understand where all the skeletons are buried and how do we
exactly.
move forward and we want to maintain our relationships with each other
I
because
had a
nothing tears a family apart more than money.
Yeah, we had somebody in another family business that I know of tell me that he has like basically a if I die book
Oh yeah,
behind his
yeah,
desk. And I was like, that we need one. I was like, that's what
yeah,
I was
yeah,
like, I just need to know where everything is because although I
yeah,
could run the daycare day-to-day business,
hmm
no issue. I know most of, the regulations inside and out. I know how the day works,
Right.
it's those other things that, like the accounting and all the stuff
Mhm.
that I'm not privy to, um, on the day-to-day basis. Like, I'm like, where are your passwords? Where are your
Yeah,
where's your finances?
absolutely. Right.
Right? Like, just
And
little
it's that
things.
knowledge transfer, right? It's
Yeah.
understanding this and saying, look, this is a skill set that I don't have, nor do I want to have this.
Yeah. No,
So,
I not if
what
I want to.
happens if you can't come into work tomorrow? Like, how do I proceed?
Yeah.
Maybe one of your brother's wives, or maybe they would want to say, hey, I can do that part,
Yeah.
or I'd like to, but I don't have the skill set. So maybe I have to go back to school and get another, some more knowledge or take a course on something. And I think that's what the whole part of preparing, right? And looking at succession, saying, I do want to keep it. And yeah, I don't want to do it day to day, but I'd like to be able to oversee, to understand how the
Mhm.
financials work or the business development, or you know what, maybe we would like to grow this. Maybe the regulations are favorable and you say, you know what, this is a good time to expand. Or, but again, when you have one skill set, it probably doesn't transfer to all the skill sets,
No, not at all.
right? So it's bringing the team together, the family together, and saying, what can we do to keep this? Do we want to keep it in the first place? And
Yeah.
second of all, if we do that, what do we need to do?
Yeah, because if you had asked me 10 years ago would I want to keep it or do anything with it, it would have been a no.
No, of course.
Of course not. And
Yeah.
now, different stage of life, I'm like, I
Yeah.
see benefit in keeping this in the family, even if our parents retire and stop working in it. But they're also people who don't like to let go. And so they're having
No,
that
no founder likes to let go.
not
It's
at
their
all. They
first
don't like to
baby. It's their
micromanage every little thing.
favorite child,
Yeah.
right? It's letting go of that. But
It
again, those family meetings and understanding the three circles, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, the family ownership and businesses,
yeah.
understanding that and the roles and the position you're in, and having conversations around that to say this is for the betterment of the family and the business and the estate and all of these things. And let's talk about them one by one, because a lot of people just want to get to the end game. And it's like, well, no, you have to do the work to get there,
Yes, you have to go
right?
through
What are
it.
we trying to achieve? And the one thing that I love what you said about, 10 years ago, you wouldn't decided to stay. And I think that's what I'm saying all the time to my families is you have to have these conversations. You have to keep having them, because you change with every age and stage and knowledge and experience. Things become different, right? When you're younger, you look at your parents and you go, oh, I don't want their role because they're never home, but they're
Yeah.
building the business, right? Um, and when you actually have a business that you spent 30, 40 years building, it's a different beast than when you first start out getting one child at a time, running a daycare for 5 kids in your basement, to having 150 kids. That's a completely different business to take over.
It
And
is.
you
Yeah.
realize that, hey, you know what? This is not a bad business. Where do my skill sets lie in this? Or maybe they don't. Actually, I don't have the skill sets, but I just want to be an owner and give direction, because I think
Mhm.
this is of value. Um, when you look at every family business, it always starts with Gen 1, right? You need Gen 1 to get to Gen 2, to get to Gen 3, and get to Gen 4. And, our focus is really to try to keep family businesses in the family. It's not always the case. As we know, only 30% transition to Gen 2. But from my experience, I think it's mainly because it's easier to sell it than it is to have some of those tough conversations.
Yeah, I can totally see that. It is hard. It's hard to talk to them about their immortality, but it's
Absolutely, right? You hate to admit it, death and
yeah,
taxes it's really true.
yeah.
They do, you can't
And
avoid either one.
it gets to that point where you feel like you're trying to parent them, and
Yeah, oh,
that's
absolutely.
a
It just
conversation
changes,
totally
right? The teeter-totter goes up and down.
yeah.
Anyway, I can't believe it, Rebecca. We're out of time. Doesn't that go
Already. Yeah,
fast?
that's
So I like to wrap up every podcast with your top 3 pieces of advice that you would give to other families and family members.
I mean, obviously, in any family or not, communication is key. You need to talk and you need to have those tough conversations. Um, it also just helps with your mental health, just to have
Yeah.
conversations and connect. So not just within a business mindset. Um, do stuff together.
Mhm.
That's not
Love that.
work related.
Yeah.
I highly recommend a good smash room or sparring. Quite fine.
Yeah. No pictures on the axe board.
Yeah, no, not at all. And I think finding other outlets where you can talk about the business, such as um, other family business groups, because for me here in Atlantic, Canada, when I joined Family Business Atlantic, and I have a peer group where I can go talk about
Yes.
the difficulties of
Right.
working with. And luckily, my peer group is part first gen, part second gen. And so we
Perfect.
can really get both
Yeah.
sides of the story. We're able to
Yeah.
talk things out. And yeah, so go find those like-minded people that you can
Yeah.
kind of
I
get through
that
with.
that is great advice because peer groups are really of value because it's Vegas rules. Like what happens in that meeting room stays in that meeting room.
Exactly.
And my son is also part of a peer group and he loves it because again, he's got first gens,
Yeah,
which are my age, maybe even a little bit older. And it's different when it comes from them than it comes from me. How
exactly.
do I deal with that? But also people in the same age category and stage that says, look, and I'm trying to forge my own path here.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm struggling with. So I think it's fabulous. Great piece of advice. Actually, I think we've done this, I don't know, 60 times. And I think that's the first time someone's mentioned that. And I think that's fabulous. That's fabulous.
It's probably because I'm trying to get my dad to join now. Now that
Yes.
I'm retired, I'm
Yes.
like, you need to start going to some of these
Yes.
to talk through the retirement process because he
hmm
doesn't know what to do with himself.
It's hard, right? Because your focus when you're first gen is building this business. The
Yeah.
second gen needs to maintain it and possibly grow it. But the first gen has spent all their time. Like my kids used to say to
All
me all the time, like, you're always at work. I said,
yeah.
I know, but I'm building, right? And I did, and don't get me wrong, I did take time off and either my husband or I went to every, school event and things like that. So we were part of that. But I was, again, you're always at work. And
Yeah.
because Saturdays and Sundays, the office is quiet, so it's great. Sundays were my day to go in the office when nobody was around because I
Yeah.
could get so much done. But it's that perception that kids have.
Yeah. She's like, Grammy's always at work. You're always at work. I'm like, we're
Yeah,
not. And you're at work with us.
yeah,
So I still see you 24/7.
yeah.
And at one
Anyway,
point, we homeschooled her. So
oh
she was
yeah, yeah.
literally with us
I
all the
need a
time.
break. I admire people who can homeschool. My goodness, I think that is a very
Oh,
special talent to have. That's a hard thing to do.
it was
Um,
all my mom. I couldn't.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you. I'm tapping out on that. I couldn't even teach them how to cook. No, that's great, Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining us. And where could people reach out to you if they had questions or, particularly interested in daycare in the
Yes.
Atlantic Canada?
Personally, I'm on LinkedIn under Rebekah Streeter Rad, and we have our website. We have one for Voda, VodaRetreats.com. We have Creative Kids Education Center. They have a website, and you can find all of us on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
If you like this episode, subscribe to the Business of Family podcast on your favorite listening platform. You can also find BlueRoots on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. On the next show, I'll be back with another amazing guest who will inspire you with their family business insights. Until then, take care and keep it in the family. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, tax, investment, or insurance advice. Before acting on any advice, please contact your personal or company advisors.